Shrimp 3 ways. We've got both feet, 1 foot inside, 1 foot outside. So anytime I press with my feet to lift my hips or move my hips, I want my feet as close to my butt as possible. I want to keep my hands close, protecting against the strikes and chokes, elbows close so that my opponent can't climb up into my armpits. I'm going to lift the hips slightly off the mat, and I'm going to crunch to one side and press my hips high, and then let them come down, okay? And there's a reason I lift my hips really high. That's exaggerated on purpose. And the reason is, if I have someone pressing on top of me, and I try and just slide my hips across the mat, there's a lot of friction on the mat here already. And if someone's weight is on top of me, I'm not going to be able to move. And so the more you lift your hips up off the mat, the easier you'll find it is, one, to move because we're reducing the drag and this friction, but two, the higher I lift them, the easier it is to sneak out from under them when I drop out of that shrimp, out of that stink bug. So I'm going to turn, crunch, stink bug, drop out of the shrimp. Okay. Trying to keep my feet planted throughout the movement. Okay. It's common to see people really kick out of the shrimp. And what I mean by that is this. Right, that's super exaggerated, but I'm kicking my hips because a lot of times when we practice this shrimp, we're going maybe from one end of the mat to the other, and we feel like we need to cover as much ground as quickly as possible, right? We want to get through those warm-ups as fast as we can, but it's not about speed with these. Don't ever make these movements about speed. Anything in jiu-jitsu is not about speed. It's about ensuring we have a good base, a good connection with the mat, with our partner, and we're executing these movements properly. And so really get those hips up high, because when someone is on top of you, the higher you lift them up off of the mat into that triangle shape, the easier it is to hold them, okay? If I barely lift my hips up off the mat and they're on top of me, that's gonna get smashed down into the mat. So from this angle, I'm going to turn, stink bug, keeping my feet on the mat, dropping, okay? Feet come in, turn, dropping. So there's with 2 feet. Whenever I do with a single foot, I'm just gonna pretend like my other leg is dead. It's just gonna be completely limp. And I think this is the best way to practice these. And so if I wanna use the outside leg, this is probably gonna be the way you shrimp the majority of the time, is just with the outside leg. So I'm bringing that foot in close to my butt. I'm gonna crunch in towards my dead leg. And when I shrimp through this movement, this leg is just gonna be limp. I'm just gonna drag it. So you can see I'm still bringing my butt up high into that stink bug position. And I'm just allowing this leg to drag. Okay. And I'm really exaggerating it there, like it's a completely dead leg, but you get the idea. We're just gonna really focus on using just the outside leg. Of course, when we use this in a practical situation, we're going to use both legs as much as possible. But when an opponent is kind of on this leg, pinning this leg, trapping this leg, we really don't get a lot of assist out of this leg. And so that's why we're gonna practice using just the outside leg on this movement here. So when I turn to my side on these shrimps, just a side note here, that'll make it easier. If I'm on top of my arm here, I feel like it makes it a lot easier to get through, okay? If you don't get to the side of your shoulder, Really, I'm kind of on my arm. It makes things a little more difficult. And what a lot of people will do on this one and the UPA is they'll go to the point of their shoulder like this, and that will cause a lot of shoulder pain in the long run, especially if you lift weights or you're a bigger person. It puts a lot of weight and a lot of pressure right on the point of that shoulder. So try and stay on the side of the deltoid whenever we UPA and whenever we shrimp here. And it will save you a lot of chronic pain, chronic injury in the long term. So the last one here we have is using just the inside leg. So again, I'm gonna let the other leg go completely dead, and I'm going to turn towards this leg this time. So I'm gonna use just this leg. Again, stink bugging up, trying to get my hips as high as possible. Allowing this leg to go more or less completely dead. Okay, so you should be very comfortable with these. Shrimping with the inside leg isn't going to be one you use a lot. It's still worth knowing, but definitely shrimping with both legs, and probably more importantly, shrimping with the outside leg. Okay, so just to illustrate the importance of getting the hips high when you shrimp, we're going to do our shrimp escape for mount here. So I'm going to pick a side. I'm going to start to try and turn to that side, and just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to show keeping my hips low on the mat. So I'm going to have Josh put just a little bit of weight on me here. He's gonna kind of sprawl his hips out, and if I start to try and shrimp here and just slide my hips across the mat, it's very difficult to get out of there. Even with him not resisting and just putting his weight on, you could see how difficult that was to slide my hips. Not only do I have my own weight fighting against me, but now with this additional weight here, I've got to really press out of here, and there's just a lot of friction. I've got the friction of the mat amplified by my own and his weight, and then I have the friction against him. So there's just a lot of drag there keeping me stuck. So when I do this, if I give a little bit of UPA here, and I'm really exaggerating that, but you can see how by lifting him up, maybe one from this angle, I can create a lot less drag in there because I practically lifted him up off of the mat, okay? So I'm just creating a lot more space and really reducing a lot of that friction, which is going to allow me to shrimp out of there a lot easier.